everyone, and welcome back to Trading Secrets. As usual, I will be trading secrets with you on ancient connections between different countries. In today's video, we will cover Indo-Dutch trade relations. I currently live in the Netherlands, and am myself in an Indo-Dutch relationship. Before I came out here, what did I know about the Netherlands? I knew that the Dutch were briefly in India, then they left. Then they got bikes. Then Amitabh Bachchan and Rekha danced around in tulip fields. And then, one who mustn't be named, went to Amsterdam in the movie Queen. Which, is not a lot. It wasn't until my boyfriend and I traveled to Fort Cochin and happened upon a Dutch cemetery on our first evening there that I started to think about our mutual shared histories. Growing up in India, especially in Maharashtra, I believe my history textbooks must have covered maybe one chapter which briefly talked about the Dutch presence in India. All I remember was that the Dutch were there, so were the British, the French, the Portuguese, and the Danish for some reason. They all fought amongst themselves and also with the Indian empires, and then the British got most of India, the Portuguese and the French stuck around in smaller colonies, and the Dutch just vanished. But those are hardly the cliff notes that will help you pass an exam. So today, I will be sharing with you the secrets that I have found behind the rise and fall of Dutch colonialism in India and how it paved the way for a new age of trading and economics. Colonial history, as we all know, is not pretty. But it is a complex part of history that has vastly shaped every country on this planet today. So before we start talking about all the scheming and conniving, let's look into why early modern colonialism started in the 15th century and sadly still continues in some parts of the world even today. As this video pertains to the Dutch, let's see why they decided to get into the business of global empire building. Around the 15th century, the trade route via the Mediterranean had been cut off by the Ottomans to the Christian European traders. And the Europeans who, as I mentioned in my last video, were addicted to spices since the time of the Romans. After Vasco da Gama discovered the new sea route, the Indian Ocean, the Portuguese established a monopoly over the spice trade. Dutch merchants used to sail down to Lisbon to buy the spices from the Portuguese, and then sell them to North and Western Europe from Amsterdam. Towards the end of the 16th century, the Dutch had been fighting a long and tedious war against the Spanish in order to gain independence. Because of this conflict, after Portugal became a part of the Spanish Empire in 1581, the Spanish would regularly cut off the newly formed Dutch Republic's access to the spice markets of Lisbon. This had a big impact on the Dutch economy, and a decade later, rich merchants from Dutch cities started funding their own expeditions to India and the East Indies to acquire the spices themselves. In the following years, a total of 12 trading companies were founded, most of which were successful. A few unfortunate expeditions even tried to find a new northern route through the Arctic, which, went just about as badly as you would expect them to. As these were individual companies, they not only competed against larger foreign companies, but also against each other. So the Dutch Republic's government, under Johan van Oldenbarnevelt, who was sort of the prime minister at the time, pressured them into uniting under one banner. In exchange, the state gave them a Dutch monopoly on the Asian trade. This way, the merchants could present a more united and stable front against the also newly formed English East India Company, and the Dutch government gained a powerful geopolitical tool. So in 1602, the United East India Company, known in Dutch as Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, or the VOC, or what we know in English today as the Dutch East India Company, was formed. The VOC merchants were allowed to maintain a military of their own and also to make deals or declare wars overseas without any prior approval. This independence to do whatever they wanted wasn't so much to attack the local empires at the beginning, but more to kick out the Portuguese. Along with the military operations came independence to set up factories, run small states, and also mint their own coinage. Essentially, the VOC was a state-licensed independent state in foreign lands. It also ran its own shipyards, the largest one being in Amsterdam. This spectacular trade with Asia contributed in making the Dutch Republic the world's key commercial hub. But maintaining large fleets, a military, and ammunition requires a lot of money. which even the rich merchants could not entirely fund by themselves. So the VOC offered shares in the company to the general public. Now, any old chap could buy shares, small or large, and depending on the success of the company, they would reap the rewards. Do you see where I'm going with this? And thus, the first ever stock exchange in history was established in Amsterdam. The VOC became the first multinational mega corporation and public limited company. At the time, the VOC raised capital 10 times that of the English East India Company. People from all walks of life poured in money, and the Dutch ships set sail to take over the Indian Ocean from the Portuguese. By 1604, the Dutch East India Company began trading in India. They arrived at Calicut and straightaway signed a treaty with the local king to drive the Portuguese out of their land. They proposed similar treaties to Venkata II of the Vijayanagar Empire in Coromandel and also the king of Sri Lanka, Rajasingha II. The VOC started building factories and defensive forts along both western and eastern coast of India, starting from Surat all the way to Bengal. But you know what? Why don't we head over for some more map time to make things clear? At the start of the 17th century, the Mughal Empire occupied a massive part of North India. The VOC established trading posts in Surat, Agra, Ahmedabad and Cambay. This came to be known as Dutch Surat, established in 1616. These factories acquired local cotton, indigo, diamonds and also saltpeter for their gunpowder. Moving southwards, Malabar was home to several smaller kingdoms such as the Rajas of Cochin, the Zamorin of Calicut and also the Travancore dynasty. By 1643, they established an office at Kayamkulam. It wasn't until the Dutch had successfully expelled the Portuguese from Ceylon in 1656 that they tried to capture Portuguese settlements in Malabar to secure their monopoly over Ceylon. From 1661, they started setting up settlements all along the coast, with their capital at Cochin. Malabar was the VOC's prime pepper trading post. Heading eastwards, we arrive at Coromandel, where Pulicat, Golconda and Nekapatnam were some of the most important sites. Pulicat saw its first Dutch settlement as early as 1610. Here they purchased cotton blankets, chairs, carpets, leather, iron, diamonds and also ivory, coffee and tea. And finally, Bengal was under the rule of the Bengal Mughals, also known as Bengal Subha. The VOC established its first proper settlement here in Pipli in 1627. From Bengal they acquired silk, cotton, saltpeter and most importantly, opium. The Dutch objective was neither religion nor empire, but trade. The Dutch were monopolists rather than imperialists. They used this strategy to form the alliances with the local rulers. It was all, let us help you eradicate these bad Portuguese men from your land. We are but humble merchants. We've got no tricks up our sleeves. But, as the Dutch say it, in no time, the monkey was out of the sleeve. They did come close to establishing a colony on Indian soil at Cochin in the 18th century, but that didn't last very long. They may not have cared about forceful conversion, but that did not make them saints either. The VOC was responsible for thousands of people being displaced from their homes and bringing them to factories elsewhere to work. Some were displaced within India or Sri Lanka, but some were completely stripped off their homeland and taken to the islands of Maluku and Java to work on their spice plantations. The VOC's success is attributed to the fact that they not only traded the spices and the fabric with Europe, but also within Asia. The Dutch didn't have much to offer to the Indian empires, other than gold or silver, which they acquired partly by pirating Spanish ships returning from the Americas. They exchanged the silver and gold at Indian markets for silk, cotton and spices, which were highly desired in East Indies, China and also Japan. They exchanged the fabrics at the Indonesian islands for mace, nutmeg and cloves to trade them with China and Japan. Here, they exchanged the goods for porcelain and silk. On their way back, they would purchase a huge amount of opium from Bengal in exchange for copper and silver. This way, the VOC raised capital at every stop and replenished on trading goods. The VOC was around for nearly 2 centuries, but even they couldn't maintain a monopoly over the spices for too long. The British and the French successfully infiltrated not just the trade routes, but also the Dutch factories. In the south, the Travancore kingdom under the leadership of King Maradanda successfully kicked them out after the Battle of Kolachit in 1742. By the end of the 18th century, the British had conquered nearly all of Dutch possessions from Sri Lanka as well. Following the treaty with the English to unite against the French, Prince William V instructed the Dutch to hand over their stations to British control temporarily, but eventually they lost them entirely. The VOC had begun to suffer economic blows, and the trade could no longer sustain, plummeting the company into bankruptcy. By 1825, Dutch India ceased to exist, after having traded for nearly 220 years. Shall we now look at some of the physical evidence for the VOC's impact in India and in Asia? Along the coast of India, you will find Dutch cemeteries and old administrative buildings in several towns. If you don't see a plaque that says it was built by the Dutch, it's very easy to mistake it for British architecture. When the British got hold of these buildings, they simply renovated them a bit and continued carrying out their administrative works from there. Several such buildings are now either in ruins or have simply just lost their context. The VOC minted several coins during their time in India. These were used at all of their factories. What I personally find quite fascinating is that they seem to have just used local Vijayanagar coin type to mint their own. Interesting. No? Anyway, moving on. The floral motif printed cotton called jeans, acquired at Golconda, has left behind a trail of treasures for people like me to go looking for. They bought this cloth not just to sell in Europe, but also in China and Japan. You find specifically commissioned robes such as this one, made from the jeans fabric, but in a Japanese silhouette. While in Europe, it was used to make women's dresses and was stitched into curtains and furniture. Jeans became such a revolution in fashion that eventually several European countries tried to ban their import, fearing it would leave their local weavers out of business. And as usual, local artisans eventually started to imitate the floral designs and adapted them to their local motifs. In the Netherlands, jeans even gained immense popularity in small towns, after locals encountered the fabrics at the Amsterdam markets. In the town of Hinderlopen, for example, jeans became an integral part of the regional folk costume. Town artists drew inspiration from the prints and painted them on wooden furniture. This way, Indian fabric became part of the local Dutch identity. I say drew inspiration here because it can be easily mistaken for appropriation. But because at the time they actually recognized that these motifs were not of Dutch origin, it's a bit of a grey and confusing area for me. Moving on, I couldn't find a whole lot of examples for this, but from what I could find, Dutch left some marks on the Bengali language as well. Most notable one is the Bengali words for the suits in a deck of playing cards. The Dutch words for hearts, diamonds and spades are harte, ruite and schoppe, which now in Bengali are horton, ruiton and ishkabon. And since I'm a sucker for playing cards, facts like these excite me. The abundance of VOC voyages offered several scientists to travel further than Europe and advance Western sciences. Amsterdam, apart from being the economic center of the Western world, also became the center for cartography, astronomy, and medicinal sciences, thanks to the easy access to the Eastern medicinal plants and spices. The Dutch presence in India may have theoretically ended in 1825, but a new storm was brewing. In 1873, the first ship carrying Indian indentured labor would arrive in the Dutch colony of Suriname in South America, starting a new history between the Netherlands and the people of the Indian subcontinent. This topic is a heavy one, and I'll go into it in detail in my next video. If you liked this video, do let me know in the comments below, and if you have any additional fun facts about Indo-Dutch relations, why not share them in the comments as well? And as usual, don't forget to like, hit that subscribe button, and share it with your friends. Bye-bye!